Every woman deserves to feel vibrant, safe, loved, and feel her power. The Woman's Vibrancy Code podcast is here for a potent use of your time. We will cover energy, hormones, and libido with episodes that also dive into entrepreneurship, money mindset, feminine power, and much, much more. Introducing Maraya Brown, Yale and functional medicine trained women's health expert, midwife, mom, and entrepreneur.
Hello, hello. I've got another repurposed interview for you. This is with Dr. Vincent Pedre. Just so that you know, I've been doing interviews for years now, and he was actually the first male that I ever brought into the space. In general, the platforms that I've run have always been by women and for women, but Dr. Vincent Pedre's content on gut health is literally that important. So I'm excited for you to listen in. Once again, you're going to want pen and paper, and you'll better understand how your gut health interacts and plays out in your hormonal well-being, as well as your mood and your overall experience of life. So this was a fun interview for me, and listen on up. Here we go. Maraya Brown here, and I have Dr. Vincent Pedre with me here today, a functional medicine physician out of Manhattan, who specializes in gut health. So let's, first of all, so like I said, Dr. Vincent Pedre, he's the medical director of Pedre Integrative Health and the founder of Dr. Pedre Wellness. He's a nutraceutical consultant for Nature MD and a functional medicine certified practitioner in private practice in New York City since 2004. He's also written the book Happy Gut, which has helped thousands resolve their gut-related health issues. You'll see the link in the description, and there is a discount code for anyone who's wanting to buy any of the Happy Gut Life products. Just use discount code BTRT. You'll see the link up above. And then I also have the links to his Facebook and his Instagram page. Welcome, Dr. Pedre.
With those words, I'm so honored to be here and to be allowed entrance into the community of women. So thank you so much for having me.
We're happy to have you. So I guess, the first question is just simply, I understand I've heard little bits of your story that you've suffered from digestive challenges yourself as a child. And I'm just wondering if you would give us a little bit of perspective. What was that like for you in your own gut healing journey, so that we have kind of a reference point and can kind of lean into you as a human being?
Yeah, interestingly, I grew up in a household that with a dad that was interested in supplements and had food allergy testing and kind of things that were really avant-garde out there back in the 80s. But with that, we still would follow doctor's advice. And so by the time I was 10 years old, I, as any child would get sick, get a bronchitis, pneumonia. I started getting sick a lot, and they would put me on antibiotics, and then they would put me on another round of antibiotics, and then another round of antibiotics. And I was probably on antibiotics at least twice or three times a year throughout my early years. And I calculated that between the age of 10 and my late teen years, I had been put on 20 plus rounds of antibiotics. And later on, some of those were antibiotics like ciprofloxacin, which takes the gut 12 months to recover from that. But if you're not fully recovered and you're already having another round of antibiotics, then what? Well, I didn't know why I developed, I always had like a really sensitive intestinal system, but my immune system was shot. I couldn't gain weight. I sometimes suffered from fatigue, from mental fog, from severe headaches, and even a little bit of mood disorder, like sometimes dipping into depression, some anxiety. And I didn't realize how all of this was connected to the gut. And it wasn't until I could look back and put all of the pieces together after doing my years of training. I trained in a standard Western medical school. But even then, I was always curious about nutrition, even though we weren't taught nutrition, because one of the things I wanted to figure out is, well, how can I not get sick so often? Like, I don't want to be sick all the time, and I don't want to be taking antibiotics all the time. And with 70% of our immune system all along the gut lining, there had to be something there. And I did my first little experiment where I took dairy out of my diet. I was just not having dairy as much. I was in medical school, and I had incorporated a lot of healthy fats. And for anybody who's listening, I was a child of the 80s, and the 80s were all about fat is bad for you. And it was about the Snackwells and, you know, all the fat-free.
Entenmann's,
Yeah.
fat-free brownies.
Yeah, and the Fig Newtons, fat-free. And so I had, it had been ingrained in my mind that fat was bad for me. But when I got into medical school, I started shifting that and realizing there are good fats in olive oil, avocados, and started incorporating more of those healthy fats into my diet, took dairy out, and lo and behold, I stopped getting sick as often. But it wasn't until over a decade later, when I trained in functional medicine, that I could finally look back and say, okay, what I thought was going to be my normal for the rest of my life, which is an unpredictable digestive system, maybe having to run to the bathroom, especially when eating out. I didn't know how things were going to sit. I didn't know how to choose the right foods for myself. And I realized all those years of antibiotics had led to leaky gut, had led to dysbiosis, an imbalance between good and bad bugs. And as a result, I had developed a sensitivity to the two biggest food groups in a teenager's diet: wheat and dairy. And oftentimes, those two food groups were actually married together in things that I was eating, like cereal with milk in the morning. I would have lots of bread. My grandmother was always showing me love by baking me these really delicious cakes, more flour. And I grew up in Miami. I'm Cuban, so lots of pastries at school. And then my mom used to take me to either Burger King or McDonald's to get a milkshake after school. So on the way home from school, so I was basically toxifying my system. I had developed leaky gut, and I was eating all the wrong foods. And I really didn't realize this until I learned about functional medicine and came to the realization, very difficult realization as a Cuban, as someone, and I think anybody of any cultural heritage, bread is a big piece of many cultural heritages, or flour. So to say that I was giving up gluten, like, that was big. That was really big. And I did that, I think, about a year after I attended my first functional medicine conference. And I don't know if you saw my video on Instagram where I kind of poked fun at the whole gluten thing. I took the Oprah interview and I spliced myself in, and I kind of made fun of the whole thing, like saying, you know, I was saying like, oh, and I told my family that I was gluten-free, and they said, okay, we'll make pasta for dinner. But it was kind of like, I did that out of the, like, it took my sister, I think, 5 years to stop offering me croissants for breakfast when I visited her, and to realize that I'm gluten-free. And it didn't really click for her until I diagnosed her son with gluten sensitivity that was causing hives and all sorts of skin rashes that disappeared when he went off of gluten. But it's funny, like, it wasn't clicking. And I'm sure people out there listening can relate to, like, you know, telling your family, like, I don't eat bread, I don't eat wheat. And they look at you cross-eyed, like, okay, well, then have some couscous. And it, like, that people don't realize, like, that, well, there's gluten in a lot of different things. Like, and so that was my journey. And it became my inspiration to work with people on gut health. And I didn't realize that, you know, what I grew up with, that I felt was my biggest crux, which was my weak digestive system, my weakened immune system, and all of the other symptoms. And we're going to talk about that because there's so many interrelationships with gut health. I didn't realize that it was going to become kind of like, it was going to be part of my life mission. And so I look at those years and I think, wow, like, what a gift to be given this, so that I could find that path and then work with people on their gut health. And then as I was working on gut health, so many other things started getting better that you realize, wow, the gut truly is, I like to call it the cornerstone of our health. And the same way that a cornerstone is that really, like in old buildings, that was the stone that was engraved, and they would put the date when the cornerstone was put in, and the rest of the building is built in relation to the cornerstone. Well, your gut is that cornerstone. It's the cornerstone of your health. And you need that really firm foundation in the gut so that the rest of your health can be standing on that firm foundation so you can be healthy.
Well, and there's a lot that I can already relate to. I'm sure many women can. I went to Yale for my nurse practitioner training. And so we get this very traditional kind of allopathic training. And how often have you heard, even mainstream physicians today will say, oh, no, your nutrition doesn't really make a difference. It's like, what? How could it not? So many
times.
You don't have a gluten.
So many times.
Yeah.
And I think also, and really devalidating of people.
Yeah.
Because you go into a doctor and you tell them, well, I eat these foods and I feel this way, or you're just going in and you're telling them, I have these symptoms. And how many times has this happened to women? They go in and they say, well, you know, I've got upset stomach, I've got fatigue, and you have all these real symptoms, but all your tests come back negative, supposedly. And the doctor tells you, well, it's in your head. You just need to go on an antidepressant. And I think, yeah, exactly. And that's happening less and less now, I think, because there's just too much knowledge and there's too much shared knowledge on the internet, thanks to people like you putting together websites like Beyond the Red Tent to really inform and empower women to take control of their health. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of like been my mission, has been to help people see that there's another path, right, and that your symptoms are valid. That if you are having symptoms and you're not getting answers for them, or the tests are negative, then maybe the wrong tests were done. Or maybe we just don't have the test yet that can actually validate what is happening in your body, but we need to look beyond that.
Right. That's why I love the functional medicine approach. You want to address hormones, let's go to the gut and the adrenals and the liver and the thyroid, and then poof, guess what? The hormones better. So, and just by the way, I have Gut Connect 365 in this water bottle.
Oh,
I love the flavor.
Thank you.
So then you were led.
Cinnamon.
This is the vanilla, yeah.
Yeah.
You then wrote Happy Gut.
Yeah.
So how has that gone? What was it like writing a book? What led you to write it? What has come of that?
Oh, God. I'll tell you. So I don't know if you can relate to this, or maybe some of the listeners, but there was something inside me that said there was a book that needed to be written. And it was like a piece of my soul that was speaking that. And that if I didn't do that in this lifetime, that there would be a piece of me that was never fulfilled. And I had a lot of failed book ideas, lots of failed ideas. And I just kept writing them. I would keep a running list on my notes on my phone of all my book ideas. And anytime I had an idea, I would just write it down, whether it was good or bad. I was just like, you know, in book titles and stuff. Then my mom passed away suddenly in 2012. I think I was a couple of months younger than 39. I was going to turn 39 in a few months. And so there I am faced with, like, I'm a guy at the end of my 30s. I'm about to enter my 40s, getting close to my 40s. And I just lost my mom. And you start thinking about the fleetingness of life, you know, that life is long, but in a split second, it can just be gone. And I really started thinking, what is my legacy? What do I want to leave behind? And that's when it just became obvious that it had been under my nose the entire time. And it was just so kind of common for me. I had cured myself of my own gut issues. I had been working with patients. I had basically become an accidental specialist in gut health because of this, because of just doing what I loved. So I wasn't even trying to do it for any other reason than I just felt passionate about it, and people kept referring people to me. And that's where the book Happy Gut was born out of the desire to share that with people, to share my own authentic story of what I had to go through, and realizing that there were so many people out there that didn't have this information, and my soul would not be happy, would not feel fulfilled if I did not create something that could share this information and reach as many people as possible to help them realize that there is a way out, that you don't have to live with this for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about specifically gut health and hormones. First, you've talked about immune system and obviously the GI disturbances, gas, bloated, diarrhea, all that stuff. What are there things, particularly for women that are going, I think my hormones are out of whack? Mm-hmm. What are some things that you might say, here are some symptoms that would lead you to really listen in to the relationship with gut health?
Absolutely. I mean, number one, fatigue, and also fatigue that changes throughout the day. So maybe you start okay, but then you start feeling more and more tired by the time the evening comes and you just barely make it home after work. You need to listen to what your cycle is doing if you're premenopausal. Are there changes in the intensity of your bleeding, the duration of your bleeding? Has your cycle shortened? All those things. Are you getting more breast tenderness? Are you becoming moodier right before your cycle comes? Are you feeling mood changes, depression, anxiety? Do you start having a lot of difficulty sleeping in relation to your cycle? All of these things. Are you breaking out? Are you having some skin issues? Are you breaking out with some acne on your face, especially here along the jawline? Do you have any skin rashes, any hives, other things that are coming up that feels abnormal? So really listening to your body and looking for, you are your body's best expert. No one knows you better than you do. And what we can most easily detect is changes in the way that things are feeling on the inside. So there could be, more obvious, like changes in bowel habits, but not everyone who is having a gut issue is going to have gut symptoms. And that's really, really important to realize, because I've seen patients with gut issues who have autoimmune disease, have all sorts of autoimmune markers, and they may not be complaining of any gut issues. Mm-hmm. And yet when I've done studies on them, stool testing, you find things like parasites, you find yeast overgrowth. I found yeast overgrowth in relation to adult acne. So the ways that things can express themselves are in so many different ways. Even just having regular things that anybody can have, like allergies, asthma-like symptoms, all of that can be related to gut health, as well as migraines. Mm-hmm. As well.
Mm-hmm. I know the women that are listening are going, yes, check, yes, check, yes, check. And weight. I think that's another big one.
Weight is a big one. Yeah, I didn't mention that, but thank you for bringing that up. Weight is very strongly linked to leaky gut syndrome. Mm-hmm. And I think, more than men, the women's body is really sensitive to toxins and toxicity in the environment and the ability to clear those toxins. And one way that I speak about that in relation to the gut is that I say that there are 3 pillars for detoxification. Everybody, when you think about detoxification, you think about the liver as being your organ of detoxification. And yes, the liver is very important, but it's only one of the 3 pillars, in my opinion. Second pillar is the gut, the digestive system. If you're not pooping, if you're not moving your bowels, then things are sitting in there for way too long, and they have a chance to recirculate back into your body. And more women more than men, because of estrogen, and especially because of a lot of estrogen dominance out there, they tend towards constipation, which spells double danger for this. And then the third pillar, which very few people think about, is the gut microbiome. Our gut microbiome is an accessory endocrine organ. It's a detox organ. It does a lot of work for us, whether it could be in favor or against. There's something called the estrobolome, which is estrogen metabolism by the gut microbiome. One thing that it can do, and I know we're going to jump into these things, is take metabolized estrogen that has passed through phase 1 and phase 2 liver detoxification, and then release it and allow it to re-enter the circulation. So one way that I explain this to people is that, every hormone, every drug, any toxin that we're exposed to, that you absorb, by the way, you are what you eat, breathe, touch, and, absorb. So if you think you're not toxin free, but you're putting on sunblocks with avobenzone and oxybenzone, things that are endocrine disruptors, you are putting endocrine-like chemicals on your body. They're going to get into your circulation and they're going to disrupt your estrogen. They're going to interact with estrogen receptors, makeup, all sorts of things, plastics and water bottles. I'm drinking out of a glass cup here. So when your liver processes this, it goes through phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 takes the metabolites. So if this is estrogen, we've got to tag the estrogen to make it easy to excrete, because estrogen is a lipid-soluble hormone. So we're going to tag it. That's phase 1. This tag is really caustic to the body, so it can harm your DNA. It has what we call reactive oxygen species. So we need phase 2. We need to support phase 2. Phase 2 comes in and puts an anchor on that tag. Now it's water soluble. It can be secreted in the bile or in the urine. And it's actually, estrogen is secreted in both. We used to think it was just bile, but estrogen is also secreted in the urine as metabolized. And so when it goes into your bowel, it's like this. It's been attached to this anchor. But if you have a dysbiosis, so if you've been on antibiotics, if you're eating the standard American diet, if you're drinking a lot of alcohol, if you've been on ibuprofen, acetaminophen, there's studies showing that both of these medications cause alterations in the gut microbiome. They also can increase gut permeability. Then you have a dysbiotic bacteria in the gut, maybe some that are producing an enzyme called beta-glucuronidase. That enzyme is going to come in and it's going to cleave off the anchor. Now the estrogen is free and it can recirculate back into your body. The longer that stool sits in your gut, the more opportunity it has for it to recirculate back in. And I'm sure you must see this a lot of estrogen dominance out there. Absolutely. In women, both pre and post menopausal.
Absolutely. And just to recap, so yes, ladies, we have to have a bowel movement every day. I look at the Bristol stool chart, ideally like a soft banana. Let's get real, right? Eat your cruciferous veggies. If you have your turmeric, take out all those endocrine disruptors, your plastics, your beauty care products. I mean, we hit this home so much in the Beyond the Red Tint community. And now Dr. Pedre is really highlighting the science behind it, as well as the microbiome conversation behind that. And I was thinking the fourth pillar could be skin, because you also sweat it out too, don't you?
You also sweat it out. Yeah.
So there could be.
Yeah, absolutely. So we could have a fourth. We could have a fourth pillar. You know how much your skin weighs?
No.
It can weigh up to 8 pounds.
Okay.
We have up to 8 pounds of skin. And I was really into skin last month because we were talking a lot about the gut skin connection on the Happy Gut Life blog. And I think still we have a lot to learn. But even we were talking, I think before we went online, about leaky gut, leaky blood-brain barrier, maybe leaky thyroid. Well, there's also like the integrity of the skin barrier. And what they found when I was looking at research studies is that the barrier function of the skin is compromised when there is a leaky gut as well. And then you start seeing things like eczema, like psoriasis, like immunological issues that show up on the skin. But we know the skin is just, you know what I call the gut?
No.
I call the gut your inner skin. So if you want your outer skin to look good, you need your inner skin to be healthy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we could talk for hours just about that. Okay, but estrogen dominance. So let's focus a little bit more on that because it is so relevant. And I know one of your videos, you talk specifically about patients with estrogen dominance and gut issues. First, if someone's like, I don't know what estrogen dominance is, we've talked a lot about some of the symptoms that would be showing up. Anything else that you would add that specifically like a woman would go, maybe I have estrogen dominance? Maybe not like you've gone and gotten a blood test.
To understand estrogen, estrogen is a really important hormone. It does a lot of really essential things for women, and it's the predominant hormone in the first half of the cycle. That's called the follicular phase, but you need it for mental clarity. So ask any woman who goes through menopause, they start having memory issues, name recall, word recall issues. That's estrogen, but also you need it for bone health as well. Now, estrogen is also growth signal. So when we talk about estrogen dominance, most of the time in premenopausal women, what is happening is they're losing progesterone. So they're losing that maturity of the corpus luteum, which is formed right after ovulation. So then we call the luteal phase. That's when progesterone comes in. It's getting the body ready to prepare for pregnancy if that happens. But progesterone is also doing some other really important things, like it's the yin yang with estrogen. Progesterone is more of that relaxing hormone. It allows you to sleep better. And anybody knows, like right before your cycle comes, a lot of times sleep gets disrupted, mood becomes a little more irritable. And you can become estrogen dominant by producing too much estrogen or by losing progesterone. So there's two pathways to that. And what I see with most women is years before they enter menopause, they start to slowly lose progesterone production. And there could be a lot of different reasons for that. I think stress is a big factor. There's dietary factors. But again, also it's the balance between estrogen and progesterone, which is going to be controlled by your gut microbiome. It's controlled also by what you're being exposed to in your life. For years, women were being put on birth control pills that had really high estrogen levels without regard to whether that could be increasing risk for any type of cancer, because estrogen is a growth signal. And we know now that we can measure estrogen metabolites, and I do this with a Dutch test. You can look for 2-hydroxyestrone versus 4-hydroxyestrone. The 2-hydroxy is protective, and the 4-hydroxy can damage DNA. And all of this is being mediated by how your body is metabolizing estrogen. And there's ways that can be supported. And again, the gut playing such an important role, as we talked about, in being able to help balance those estrogen levels.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the Dutch test, and it really is the best way, in my opinion. If you want to look quantifiably at your hormones, get a Dutch test. So hormones in relation to gut, I feel like we're getting somewhere. Do you have any specific suggestions if a woman goes, all right, maybe I didn't think I had leaky gut. Maybe I didn't think I had a gut dysbiosis, but I definitely feel like my hormones are out of whack. And I'm having increased irritability and fibrocystic breast and breast tenderness and menstrual migraines, and my menstrual cycle's all over the place, and hot flashes are coming in, and vaginal dryness is showing up. And maybe there is something there. What would you recommend for them to do to help their gut?
Oh, God. Yeah. Well, first, find a functional medicine practitioner or a naturopath that you can work with, or even a dietitian or a clinical nutritionist who is trained in functional medicine. Because it's really important to look at first the foundation of the gut, like I said, the cornerstone of our health. And depending on if they're pre or post-menopausal, there are certain things that you can do to help support different parts of the cycle. Like we know that root vegetables have bioidentical progesterone. So cycling in root vegetables during that second half of the cycle is really important, as well as knowing, when you can be a little more intense with your exercise in that first part of the cycle, but maybe not as much later on in the cycle. So really kind of like listening to the rhythm of the body, but you start with the gut. You start looking at maybe doing a stool PCR. There's different tests out there. There's the GI map, the Genova GIFX. There's the gut zoomer. Some of those we can't do in New York because of New York's embargo on these tests, which is ridiculous. But that would be a place to start. And I'm going to say that I've seen women get knocked into menopause when they go through an extremely stressful event in their lives.
Totally.
And it could be, it's like a PTSD type triggering event, like they're going through a divorce or something's happening with a really close family member. So I think with any conversation, and what I learned from over a decade of taking care of gut patients, because there are those out there without judgment that are checking off the supplements, checking off, I'm doing everything right with the diet, but they're still living their type A lifestyle. They're rushing through lunch. They're like rushing here, rushing there. And either they feel mentally stressed, or a lot of times they don't even think they're stressed. Like I've had so many patients where I've had to point out to them and tell them, you're stressed. Mm-hmm. And if you don't realize that you're stressed, maybe you're not mentally stressed, but you're biophysically stressed. Like I try to explain it, like, even if you don't think you're stressed, you're stressing your body out by putting too many things on your plate, by not saying no to things, trying to do too many things, rushing through your lunch, like not taking a moment to rest and digest. So in any of these conversations, when we're talking about gut health, it's so important to address the elephant in the room. I like to call it sometimes the elephant in the room, which is stress, anxiety, and self-care. I mean, talk about like women have traditionally been like the people that care for others, right?
Still are.
And I can't tell you,
everybody.
Give. And I can't tell you how many times I've had to sit in my office with a woman, a mother, a wife, whatever it is, and tell them, like, you need to say no.
Yeah.
And you've got to say yes to yourself. And I need you to create space for self-care. And that self-care is going to make you the best version of you for everybody else. So everybody's going to benefit. It's like, put your oxygen mask on first, then help everyone else. If you don't put on your oxygen mask, eventually you're going to drop to the ground.
Totally.
But so many caregivers out there, givers, just give to the point where they just deplete themselves. I mean, these are the ones that come in and their adrenals are on the ground. Their gut is a mess. They can't lose weight, and their sleep is horrible, and they feel miserable, and they're depressed. And it's because you can't put yourself last all the time. You've got to bring yourself to the front.
I want to say, for anybody who follows me, I did not pay him to say this. Like, you are saying the stuff that I say all the time. It's woman to woman. We have to put on our own oxygen mask first. You think about the HPA axis, right? The adrenals, particularly as we're going into perimenopause, those adrenals have to pick up the brunt of what the ovaries start slowing down. And the pituitaries, they're communicating with the thyroid and the ovaries, and the hypothalamus is dealing with the old trauma. So like you said, a high stress event, that HPA axis is already tired, and it just goes, I got nothing, I'm done. Yeah. Particularly because we as women, we give and we care for everyone first. And so I wanted to say,
we just like mentally synced, like I'm just like,
I think we do similar work probably. And yes, you can go to just ifm.org and find a provider. Many of them work virtually. I think, Dr. Pedre, you see patients virtually. I work as a women's health coach. This is what I do. You can check me out at marayabrown.com. And all of this is so important for us to be sharing. And it's just the tip of the iceberg. If you're going, yes, this is me, really, truly listen into your body and reach out to other providers that really listen to you. So we've talked about estrogen. What about other hormones? We think about insulin and the thyroid or hormones of the gut. I don't know, ghrelin, leptin. Like, are there any other hormones that you want to highlight in the conversation of gut health that feel really important?
Absolutely. I mean, again, for women, because 8 times as many women as men suffer from autoimmune thyroid disease, and as we know as Hashimoto's, which is hypothyroidism. So for somebody who doesn't know or understand, it means your thyroid starts functioning slow. And because your thyroid is your metabolic set point, when your thyroid starts malfunctioning, not producing enough thyroid hormone, your metabolism starts slowing down, you start gaining weight, you start feeling tired, and you can have a whole slew of other symptoms. I've seen people power through this like incredibly, where they get up, they go to work, and they barely make it home. They just crawl into bed at 9 p.m. and then they just repeat the next day. And TSH was like 84, which is crazy. But it's incredible what people can do to just keep pushing themselves. And of course, the adrenals relate to how your thyroid is doing as well. So the adrenals can come in and kind of kick in until one day everything collapses. But I'm mentioning the thyroid because thyroid produces a hormone called T4. And the majority of thyroid hormone is in the form of T4, 93%. And that T4 needs to be converted into the active form, T3. Now, in order for that to happen, it actually doesn't happen in just one location. It happens in multiple locations. And you probably guessed it. One of those is your gut. But a bigger location is the liver. 60% of the T4 to T3 conversion happens in the liver. But 20% of it is being converted by your gut microbiome from T4 to T3. The other 20% is actually happening at the cell location itself. So it's happening at the destination tissue. But that 20% that's requiring a healthy gut microbiome, that's a lot. Like if you lose that, then that can also affect your T4 to T3 conversion. And when you're not converting well, the more active form, you can start feeling tired. And even ask women out there, like they're on Synthroid, they're on T4 replacement, and they're still feeling tired. Well, what's going on there? So maybe there's an underlying gut issue. Maybe there's micronutrient deficiencies as well. Selenium, zinc, really important for thyroid hormone function, as well as iron. A lot of women premenopausal suffer from iron deficiency, and that can also affect the functioning of the thyroid. But if you have a condition like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, where there's too many bacteria in the small intestine, and those bacteria are consuming nutrients before your body has an ability or chance to absorb them, for example, like iron. So that can also cause iron deficiency and can lead to thyroid problems that you might be told you're hypothyroid, but you're just iron deficient. And if you supplement your iron levels, then your thyroid might just start functioning properly again, because you also need iron for your mitochondria, the energy centers in every single cell in your body to function properly. So we have to think about thyroid, so important. And then insulin. Insulin is a hormone that regulates blood sugar levels. And the thing is that I think until even just a couple of decades ago, even just recently, we really thought of diabetes and metabolic syndrome as something that just happened to the pancreas, like your beta cells that produce insulin started dying off. You don't produce enough insulin and you become insulin resistant. And then eventually, once enough of those cells get toxic and die off, you develop diabetes. Well, now we understand that the gut microbiome is actually playing a really key role in controlling your body's sensitivity to the insulin signal. And of course, it's a little more complicated than that. But one thing that we know is that, so remember, I was talking about leaky gut in the beginning, and the things that lead to leaky gut, like antibiotics, the standard American diet, excess alcohol, certain medications, even birth control pills can lead to leaky gut. And when you have leaky gut, that increases the influx of certain bacterial toxins like endotoxin. And endotoxin increases inflammation. It activates inflammatory pathways in the body. So you have leaky gut, you have increases in endotoxin. And what they've found in studies is that rises in endotoxin will precede metabolic syndrome, the occurrence of obesity, and the occurrence of diabetes. So now we know that there's actually a gut source for why even a hormone like insulin is getting scrambled. And once the process gets going and you start developing more of that apple shape with more fat here in the belly, then that fat also starts scrambling the insulin signal. So maybe you have a dysbiosis, an imbalance of good, bad bugs in the gut. And now you've got extra fat in the middle. So now the fat is working against you. The gut is working against you. It's all scrambled.
I lost my headset. Okay, so basically you've got this accumulation of things that are working against you, and what it leads to is frustration, because what you know is I've gained 20 pounds, I can't lose this weight, and now you're going to your doctor and your doctor's telling you might be pre-diabetic. What they're not telling you is that it may all be coming from your gut.
Right. But they'll give you metformin, which will throw your gut off a little bit.
They'll give you metformin, which can cause B12 deficiency. And actually, there are other nutrients like berberine that have very similar function to metformin that can also regulate the gut microbiome. So, yeah, I mean, I think I think we're putting the point across that so many things start with the gut. Yeah. And a lot of women's health issues do have foundation in the gut.
And so once again, just to hit home some solutions, obviously women can buy Happy Gut, and thank you for the discount code. You can BTRT, you guys can see that in the description. Can they reach out to you and schedule online visits? Do you have any other specific recommendations that women could start with today to start addressing the gut dysbiosis, maybe without even testing, without seeing a functional medicine provider, just healthy steps towards a healthier gut?
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, if you just take out the top 2 food groups that are most problematic for the gut, which are dairy and gluten, and even just say like, you're not going to do it permanently, you're just going to do it for 4 to 6 weeks and see how you feel. That's usually how I trick people into becoming lifelong like converts into this. And look, it doesn't mean that you have to be that for the rest of your life. I think everything is a choice, but that's a really great place to start. And I think when you choose health first, then it doesn't feel like you're on a diet. You're just on a lifestyle program where you're putting your health first. And if you make your health your number one priority, then the decisions around your health become much easier, and choosing to eat or not eat something becomes not a restriction, but actually a choice in favor of your health. And I would add to that sugar. Because sugar is so problematic, both in regular form and artificial form. The average American is eating 124 grams of sugar per day. That is 30 teaspoons of sugar, and it can come as straight up sugar like soft drinks, high fructose corn syrup, but also in just refined bread products, refined flour. There's hidden sugar in so many things in packaged foods that you get. So if you can knock those things out, like you can make really great strides, even just starting there to healing the gut. We do see patients virtually in my practice, and I have a functional medicine trained nurse practitioner who works with me and does consultations virtually. So they can reach out through pedremd.com. And, we offer that service to, we obviously have a limited capacity of how many people we can see with that, which is partly, again, why I wrote my book, Happy Gut, and created the whole Happy Gut program, because I knew that there's just too many people out there who need help that we can't, as practitioners, we can't possibly see everyone, but what we can do is reach them by offering them knowledge, empowering them with knowledge. And like you said, you were drinking Gut Connect. That's a leaky gut formula that I developed in conjunction with now Nature MD. And I think it's one of the best leaky gut formulas on the market.
I agree.
I put together everything that I knew about leaky gut, about all the other formulas out there, even flavor profile. I taste tested it with my son to get his approval. And I think we created a really excellent product that is really easy to add to everybody's lifestyle. Because, you know, when you're making these changes, I mean, this is another question I get is like, do you need to do everything at once? And it really depends. There's a lot of women out there I've had as patients that are incredible. They're like, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And they'll just do bump, 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 bump. Like they can do all or none. But there are those out there who are going to get overwhelmed. Like, what? I have to take gluten out and I have to take dairy out. And then, but what do I eat? And with those, what I say is like, look, let's stack in the changes. So first, what's the easiest thing for you to conquer? Oh, I can get rid of dairy. I can stop eating cheese. I can, you know, start having coconut yogurt instead. Well, let's start with dairy and master it. So once you feel comfortable with that, then let's stack in taking out gluten. Yeah. And we'll do it little by little. You know, maybe it's just like you need to get bread out of the table and not have bread if you eat out. And then we'll go to other gluten containing grains as well. So I think the thing for people to realize is that health is truly a journey, and that journey is a personal one. It can be as fast as you want, but it can also be in a more slow, controlled fashion that you can tolerate. Because the last thing we want to do is add another thing to your overstacked plate. Yeah. You want to do it in a way that you can actually incorporate into your life. And a lot of times, you know, if it's a family, if it's husband and wife, like I tell them, look, try to like enroll your significant other in this, like make it a household thing. So it's not like you're making your separate dinner and everybody else is eating all the stuff that you can't eat. Like just make it a household thing. Like my home with my son and now my ex, but back then our family unit, we went gluten-free. When I went gluten-free, we became a gluten-free household. Yeah. And if anybody wanted to eat gluten, it was when we ate out. But at home, we were completely gluten-free. So there was no issue of cross-contamination.
I remember when I went gluten-free maybe 7 years ago, and I went in kicking and screaming, and I could not believe the transformation in my body. I mean, I was blown away. And gosh, there's so much that I want to say, and I know we're aware of time, so we need to go. But regarding the Gut Connect 365, you know, I work as a women's health coach doing a functional medicine approach to helping women in an online setting. So we get to work with bigger groups at a time. And everybody knows that works with me. I love adaptogen elixirs, and women are making their adaptogen elixirs. And often one of the things we can sneak in is the Gut Connect 365. And then also supporting women off of alcohol and getting creative with mocktails. I was just on a call this week and we were talking about get your carbonator in your kitchen and add the Gut Connect 365 to your mocktail. The flavor is lovely and we can make it fun as a way to substitute and take out the alcohol, but also, oh, by the way, it happens to be healing and medicinal because I'm making a choice to do what serves me. It's not that I'm depriving myself. It's not that I'm going on a diet. I love what you said about making it a lifestyle that's sustainable. So an overwhelmed mind says no. An overwhelmed mind is the quickest way right into fight, flight, or freeze. Now your adrenals are on board. That's not what we're looking for here. Find that layering, like Dr. Pedre is saying, that feels doable for you for the long run. I'm sticking with this for 6 weeks, 6 years, 20 years, whatever it's going to be.
I'll speak to it because when I first went gluten-free, I thought, oh, this is an experiment. Let me see, is gluten really an issue with me? Now, I have autoimmune disease in my family. My mother had rheumatoid arthritis and my older sister has multiple sclerosis. So I was in my mid to early 30s. And I was thinking, if I don't address this, I could be putting myself at risk for an autoimmune disease with leaky gut, with everything that had happened to my gut. But I took gluten out and I was thinking, well, this is an experiment. I'll do this for 3 months and then see. And when I introduced gluten at that point, I developed an unusual rash that came on the inside of my wrist. And it was within 10 minutes of eating rye bread, I saw a rash turn red and it became itchy. And I thought, okay, that's really strange because like you shouldn't have a reaction this quickly after eating gluten. So I avoided it for another 3 months. And then I tried it again. It was rye bread again. And lo and behold, within 10, 15 minutes, I have this itchy red rash on the inside. And I say, okay, this is showing me, and I'm saying this so for anyone who's listening to realize that you have to pay attention to even the smallest little signal your body gives you. Because then later on, like I think at some point I was with my sister and had a beer, and obviously beers have wheat, and immediately I felt congested. And I thought, okay, you keep wanting to test the water, but your body keeps telling you no. The answer is no.
Totally.
And it took a little while where I was like mostly gluten-free, but sometimes testing. And I've gotten to the point now in my life where it's not even worth paying the price.
Yeah.
And because I put my health as the highest priority and feeling good and being present and being able to do interviews and be clear-headed, that it's not even worth that moment of momentary joy. And there's so many things you can make now that are gluten-free that taste so good. If you're missing bread, if you're missing a cake, like there's so many substitutes out there. Not that you want to go into that too much, but hey, once in a while, you want your little fix of something that you used to be able to have when you can have gluten. And if you find a gluten substitute, like why not? But as long as it's the exception, not the rule. But what I found is that the more I made health my number one priority, and as I tell my patients, it's easier to make these decisions and not feel like I'm deprived because you're making a choice for your health. You're not making a choice against yourself.
Right. Making a choice for what feels good. For me, it was aches and pains. Chronic neck pain. Neurosurgeon told me I needed complete reconstructive surgery on my cervical spine. And it was amazing taking gluten out. All the aches and pains went away. It's like, no way. So I could keep talking forever. And of course, I want to encourage everyone, check out the Happy Gut Life website. On there, there's also lots of recipes, ideas for not just what are we taking out, but what do we substitute it with? Obviously, fruits, vegetables, and berries. Plants are going to be the main thing, but there's lots of variety there. You can follow Dr. Vincent Pedre on his Facebook page, as well as Instagram. Those are up above. I've so appreciated this time, and I could keep talking to you for a long time, I think. Anything else that feels important to say, unsaid, specifically around women, gut, and hormones?
Yeah, I've had so many people write in and tell me that they had issues that they thought couldn't be fixed, that they would have to live with. And then they did my program, they did elimination diet, healed, really worked on gut healing and lost weight, felt great. So many times, patients, people like would tell me like, people ask me like, what are you doing? Like your skin is glowing, like you look different. So I just want to say, like, even if you've had chronic symptoms for a long time, there's still always hope that there's a way to get your body back into that healing mode, because that's really where your body wants to be. It just needs to be given the opportunity to do so. And the one way that I've learned to do that is by first starting with working on gut health, and then everything else that is related to that. And in tandem to that, you've really got to work on your mind. And that's one thing that I do a lot with people, because mindset is the one thing that will block you from doing the right things for yourself. So you've got to work on your belief system. You've got to work on even just the way you identify with yourself. And if you have a chronic illness, like the way you identify yourself in relation to that illness, like you have to like detach yourself, like the essence of you, your soul is not that disease. And it's very important to get out of that chronic disease mindset, especially for people who have been suffering from symptoms for a very long time. So working on mindset and the foundation of the gut is, for me, the key to so many other things, including hormone balance, getting the weight that you want, feeling great in your body, and just living the best life.
Mm-hmm. And I love that you pointed out women prioritizing themselves. Put your own oxygen mask. And even the thyroid conversation, it didn't come up, but speak your truth. It's powerful. So thank you. It's been lovely. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, of course.
Wasn't this episode amazing? Let's distill it down to key takeaways and action steps.
All right, so what are a few of my key takeaways and action steps from that phenomenal interview with Dr. Vincent Pedre? First of all, just to acknowledge all those antibiotics you have taken in the past, and to know that some of your symptoms today may be a byproduct of that. I love how he covered symptoms of leaky gut, estrogen dominance and the role of progesterone. And let's just get real. We all need to be pooping every day. It's essential.
Thank you for listening to the Woman's Vibrancy Code. Connect with us and take the first step to transforming your energy, hormones, and libido at thewomansvibrancycode.com. Cheers to your zest and vitality. Make sure to follow for weekly power-packed value.